All right, it is 4:30. We will call to order the Board of Trustees special called meeting via Zoom. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make the motion to adopt the agenda.
I so move.
Mr. Grabowski makes the
I
motion.
second.
And Ms. Watley
Second.
second. All in favor, aye.
Aye. I'm
Any
sorry.
opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I oppose. I think this.
Nay. Nay.
Okay, so I guess we will have to do this in order. Mr. Grabowski,
Can you hear me? I'm traveling, so I'm calling on the road.
okay, will you vote to adopt the agenda?
Yes, I do vote to adopt the agenda.
Mr. Kelly?
I vote aye.
I vote aye. Ms. Waters?
Nay.
Ms. Bailey? Aye. Mr. Calhoun?
Nay.
Ms. Watley? Ms. Watley? Do you vote to adopt the agenda? You're muted. Maybe she's frozen because she was
Yes.
traveling.
Yes. I do.
Yes.
Yes.
And we don't have Ms.
Smoke signals.
We don't have Ms. Roberson, right?
He's here.
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you vote
Nay.
nay. Dr. Temple?
Nay.
Nay. I vote aye. So the motion passes. So we will go on to item 2A, a personnel matter. Is there a motion to confirm the superintendent's appointment of an interim chief of schools subject to finding the funding in fiscal year 24 budget under the salary category?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Grabowski makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Can you read that motion again?
Yes, I'll be happy to read it again. Is there a motion to confirm the superintendent's appointment of an interim chief of schools subject to finding the salary in the fiscal year 24 budget under the salary category?
Okay.
Mr. Grabowski makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Watley seconds. All right. Mr. Grabowski, do you, we will each vote aye or nay. Mr. Grabowski?
Is there going to be discussion?
sorry,
on the
we have-
motion?
We will, right, excuse me, I'm ahead of myself.
Mhm.
Discussion. Mr. Grabowski, any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Mr. Kelly?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Waters?
Yes, I don't understand why we're voting for this at all. We just voted on Monday to allow him to do this. Why would we then need to vote to approve an interim position at all? Particularly because it's interim, and secondarily because one of these positions is far beneath the purview of the board per policy.
Mr. Grabowski and I met with Dr. Gallion yesterday, and we confirmed with Ms. Paylor that because the May 18th motion was not rescinded, that Dr. Gallion's appointments currently would be needed to be approved by the board. And Dr. Gallion requested this meeting for us to be able to do that.
So this goes to my issue, my historic issue with the fact that I don't believe that we're being appropriately counseled. Where anywhere does it say that once we make a motion that something can occur, that we then have to come back and approve every piece of every activity relating to that very motion.
I have got those two Roberts references on another piece of paper, if you'll excuse me, unless you've got them handy, Ms. Paylor. I've got them right over here. Hold on.
I can address that if you would like.
I love it.
What y'all had before you were two conflicting motions. Because one said that Dr. Gallion could not hire anybody without approval of the board. And that's still in place. The second one, all it said was he could take appropriate action to hire interim and vacant positions. Appropriate action was going back to this motion. And Robert's rule says if there's a conflicting motion, the first motion that was there controls. So this is done really to correct what I'm assuming that y'all wanted to do on Monday night.
I'm gonna defer because I see Darren's hand and I'm gonna let somebody else have a comment.
All right, Ms. Bailey, any discussion on your part?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes, because that is the complete opposite council that we got back in February when we had the one motion. We had at my very first meeting, we had one motion. The very next meeting, we called a special call meeting and then did a motion to overturn that other thing. There were two conflicting motions. So why, if we have these two conflicting motions again, do we have to let the first one override?
Well, at that meeting, if you recall, you had not been provided all of the information.
Correct.
And in Robert's rules, if there's new information, then you can go back and revisit it. But what you have right here is you told him that he had to get board's approval in one motion. And in the second motion, you said he had to take appropriate action to fill vacant and interim positions. So they're not even necessarily conflicting, but the appropriate action, because that motion is still in place, is for him to bring those people to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Paylor. Anything else, Mr. Calhoun?
Yes, I think this is unnecessary. If we hired a superintendent, we need to let the superintendent do his job.
Okay.
We hired the superintendent. Why do we have to approve anything like this? This is completely unnecessary. This is an unnecessary meeting.
Well, it's because we have a motion in place requiring it. Ms. Watley, any comment?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Roberson? You're muted.
Still muted.
Can the administrator of the Zoom ask her to unmute?
I think she just needs to swipe.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The administrator of the Zoom can actually push it to her screen.
Excellent. Excellent.
Dr. Temple, we'll go on to you while we try to work out our technical situation with Ms. Roberson.
Could you please read the motion again?
Yes, ma'am. A motion to confirm the superintendent's appointment of an interim chief of schools subject to the funding in the fiscal year 24 budget under the salary category.
Okay, so we're not taking both positions in the same motion?
No, ma'am, we're not. Dr. Gallion listed them separately, so we wanted the motions to be separate.
Okay, all right. Well, I will support the motion, but I do feel like we don't need this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I have asked her
Ms.
to,
Roberson, excuse me,
on-
Dr. Temple has the floor. Are you through, Dr. Temple?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Roberson?
Mrs. McKinney, this is Anita Huggins. Mrs. Roberson is on my phone and she's going to try to speak because her wireless is her internet is spotty, so it's circling. Mrs. Roberson, can you hear me, Mrs. Roberson?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Mrs. McKinney, can you all hear me?
We
Okay, go
can.
ahead, Mrs. Roberson.
Okay, I'm a little confused about the opinion that Ms. Paylor gave. First, let's go back to May 18th vote. The vote, once again, was not meant for this new superintendent. Everyone on this call know that that vote was made for the situation at hand on May 18th. To now try to apply this to a new superintendent is disingenuous.
Right. Ms. Roberson, I'm sorry I
So, let me
interrupt you, but your comment has
now
to
we
do
are
with the
using a vote
motion,
of May 18th.
not with a
that took
previous, not with a
that
previous
took place before he
situation.
got here to micromanage him.
I'm sorry,
Secondly, while I have the floor, Ms. Taylor, if you are our counsel and you saw the motion, it is your responsibility to give advice to the superintendent and anyone else, and not just select people.
I offered to give advice. Somebody has to solicit it from me. I'm not a member of the Board of Trustees. I can't tell you. I told the superintendent after the
Who
meeting.
solicited this advice from you this time in order for you to give it?
Well, I'm sorry I don't have my gavel, but speaking when recognized has to relate to the motion on the floor. I'm sorry, Ms. Roberson. Is there
No, it doesn't.
anything you
Speaking
would
has-
like
This
to
is my
say
time, and I get to use my time to speak. And I'm speaking
about
to the motion on the floor. And I'm asking our counsel, why didn't she give advice in her opinion before? And whoever solicited to advice from her, it was not shared with the entire board.
If you ask me for advice, I will help you. I will help you draft a motion. I was not at the May meeting where y'all adopted the motion. You said the words, "the superintendent" in there. If you wanted to limit it to Mr. Kennedy, you should have said, "the superintendent, Mr. Kennedy." I'm just telling you what you've done. You know, when you do a motion, somebody's got to come and then look at it and take it from the minutes and see what it was. I am very happy to help you draft any motion that you want help with, but you have to ask me.
Well,
Right,
now
and
Mr. Kennedy was, the motion was made and the vote was taken when Mr. Kennedy was the superintendent, not Dr. Gallion. So he is now the superintendent, and we are going to, every time he wants to do something, we're going to have a special call meeting to micromanage him to approve.
No,
No,
ma'am.
I'd like to call a point of order. Can we please center the discussion around the motion that is at hand, not what happened on May 18th?
Ms.
No,
Roberson,
you don't get the motion on the floor is centered around what happened May 18th. And you are a trustee just like me. And you don't get to tell me that I can't speak about a motion that is causing this special call.
No, but as chair, I will address your question. In a meeting with Dr. Gallion yesterday, I and Mr. Grabowski, and is how the special meeting came about, that there will not have to be a special called meeting for every appointment or that he wants to make. We are waiting on an organizational chart and his overall plan. This is just to address the immediate issue. And as far as Ms. Paylor confirming my interpretation of the two motions, I left with the understanding that she confirmed. So if other people read it differently, that's just a difference. So, Mr. Grabowski, any other discussion on your part?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Kelly,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Waters,
Yes.
on the motion?
Ultimately, yeah. Please. Ultimately, we don't need to end up back in this position of constantly approving and disapproving. And I heard you say we're not going to continue to do that.
Right.
But this motion here today, as connected to the motion we made Monday, shows otherwise. And let me make it clear that my concern in all of this is that given the vote that occurred on Monday connected to this, the initial vote to not allow the superintendent to not rescind the motion that is the reason that we're here today, is evidence that there's control happening here of the superintendent. And I didn't sign up to be a superintendent of Charleston County Schools. None of you applied either. And so you didn't sign up to do that either. We signed up to be board members to set policy, to review the budget, not manage the budget, but to review the budget and to manage the superintendent. We cannot manage someone that we don't allow to do their job in the first place, because then it becomes muddy. Who made what decision and what is the reason that we get to a certain outcome? And so this is very messy, and it's actually terribly inefficient. We will never be able to be clear and demonstrate to the public what decision points led to certain outcomes if we continue to muddy things in this way. Now, I am in full support of the motion, as I voted in favor of the two motions on Monday night. But I'm not in favor of micromanaging the superintendent, who's been here all of a month and a half, and we hired him based on his qualifications. We have no reason as of today or Monday to have said or assumed that he could affect.
And I understand, but what you're saying.
Please don't cut me off, Ms. McKinney. It actually pertains directly to this motion. You're the chair, but I'm still a member of this board.
It refers to his appointment. Okay.
So what I'm saying all has to do with this. I don't have to be saying the words, allow the superintendent, approve. It all pertains to this. Okay. And I didn't do anything disrespectful by asking you to please allow me to continue uninterrupted. I would like very much to just be doing the job that I signed up for when I ran for office.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey, any other comment?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Calhoun?
No.
Ms. Watley?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Roberson? Dr. Temple?
I just want to be sure that with
I'm sorry, Dr. Temple. I'm Mrs. Roberson. I'm sorry. Mrs. McKinney, I put myself on mute, but Ms. Roberson does have a comment. Do you mind?
Oh, okay. Sure. We'll back up. We'll back up.
My apologies, Mrs. Roberson.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. I said I support the superintendent in his appointments to these interim positions. And I hope that this is the last time that we will try to micromanage him, because this effect coming off of the May 18th vote will definitely affect the way that we evaluate him if we don't allow him to do his job.
Thank you. Dr. Temple?
Well, I just want to say that we should be following our policies. And I hope that this motion today, which I will support the motion because I believe Dr. Gallion has the right to make these appointments, that us having this meeting and this new motion doesn't set us into a situation where we're doing this over and over again. I mean, we have policies. Policy CBC clearly identifies I've researched this, and policy CA gives him the authority to do what he's asking to do.
Thank you. Are we ready for the vote? Mr. Grabowski?
Nay.
Mr. Kelly,
Nay.
Ms. Waters,
Yay.
Ms. Bailey,
Nay.
Mr. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Watley,
Nay.
Ms. Roberson,
Ms. Roberson voted yes. I'm sorry, I put her on mute.
That's fine. I got it. Thank you.
Miss Denny's trying to work to get her off mute, but
I understand. Dr. Temple,
Yes.
and I vote nay. So the motion fails. We will go on to item 2B. Is there a motion to confirm the superintendent's appointment of an additional interim executive director of elementary schools subject to funding in the fiscal year 24 budget under the salary category? And I will read that again for everyone. Is there a motion to confirm the superintendent's appointment of an additional interim executive director of elementary schools subject to funding in the fiscal year 24 budget under the salary category?
So moved.
And that was made by Mr. Grabowski. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Watley. We will start discussion. Mr. Grabowski,
I have nothing to say.
Mr. Kelly,
Nothing, ma'am.
Ms. Waters,
I don't have a comment.
Ms. Bailey,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Calhoun.
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Paylor. So the motion that we took last Monday, what does that have to do? What power does it have? We just took a vote for nothing?
Mm-mm.
It was the
Madam
motion
Chair-
that y'all-
Madam
that you
Chair, I call for
made.
orders of the day, please. Can we discuss the motion on the table?
Directly related.
Yes,
to-
sir. That
Okay.
would be appropriate.
Absolutely.
Mr. Calhoun, do you have a question about this motion?
It is a question to our legal counsel about this motion. And I have to bring that together so we can talk about what we're doing right now.
Well, what we are doing right now is on the agenda.
Yes.
And
that
it
exactly
is giving
related to
Mr.
this right here.
Gallion, excuse me, it is giving Mr. Gallion the opportunity to appoint, to take action, but the action has to have board approval.
Okay, so I guess my question that's directly related to this is, when was the last time we approved interim positions?
Madam
It's
Chair,
not
I call
about-
for orders of the day, please. Like to
Not the order
discuss-
of the day. Are we not approving an interim position right now?
We're not discussing history.
Right, we are approving his current action, which
Ridiculous.
has to be approved
I
by
have
the
no-
board.
I apologize. I have no questions. This is ridiculous.
Okay, Ms. Watley,
I'm sorry, I got caught up in that exchange. What are we actually discussing?
the second motion, do you have a comment?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Roberson, per Ms. Huggins' phone.
Ms. Roberson, do you have a comment?
I do have a comment. This motion is because of the advice of Ms. Paylor. So what Mr. Calhoun was saying was actually in order, directly related to this motion, because it was because of her advice that we are on this call.
Well, the reason we're on this call is out of respect for Dr. Gallion and his request.
It's disrespectful.
Ma'am? Anything else, Ms. Roberson?
Ms. Roberson has nothing else at this time. Mrs. McKinney.
All right, Dr. Temple?
Yes, I came to this meeting reading this special agenda, researching what our policies were, thinking that we were going to have a discussion as to why these motions were needed, why this meeting was needed. And I find it disingenuous that we're getting these nay votes on these motions without any rational reasoning why we're doing this. Why do we have?
I think your comment on
I'm
votes
speaking,
is not
I'm speaking.
appropriate to the motion. I know, but
You
when
may not think
recognized
it's
one
appropriate, but it is
motion.
appropriate because we should be having a discussion about the rationale for these different appointments. You are making votes that you have no idea what Dr. Gallian's rationale or reasoning is about this. And you're overstepping our policies. I'm really discouraged with this board. I'll tell you that much. This is ridiculous. I can't imagine how you all can smile and act like this. I mean, we are never going to get to the point where we're going to be able to have a good, honest discussion about what were the reasons for these two appointments.
Madam Chair, I call for orders of the day. Can we please discuss the motion at hand?
Dr. Temple,
I'm still speaking, Mr. Kelly.
I'm
And
sorry.
so
Point of
gotten
order, Madam
But
Chair.
You're
Where?
making, the comments are directed toward trustees, and I will address what you said. I had a very open conversation with Dr. Gallian that I very much look forward to the organizational chart and his reasonings that he mentioned in his interviews with us. And once we have that information, I think, in his evaluation, and we will be ready to move forward. And he knows that is my opinion. So
you have had a private discussion with him that you
no,
didn't
ma'am.
share with us until
I
this.
think Dr. Gallian's door is open to any of us at any time.
No,
I feel certain his door is
you're
open.
using your
to
power in the wrong way.
Point of order, we're debating.
the chair is calling for the vote on the second motion. Mr. Grabowski,
Nay.
Mr. Kelly,
Nay.
Ms. Waters.
Ms. McKinney, before you called, I was trying to come off mute. We weren't given our second time around, but I would like to, if possible, hear from Dr. Gallian on what was the purpose of these appointments, because unfortunately, in getting caught up in the reason for why we were here, we also never did hear from him about why he wanted these positions or why he's asking for them at this time.
I'm not sure Robert's Rules of Order allows us to interrupt a vote, but I'm happy to finish the vote and then let Dr. Gallian speak. Is that the correct Robert's Rules, Ms. Paylor?
Once you started voting, you do need to finish it.
Right.
Sure. A question I would have though is, Robert's Rules was created significantly before we had internet and things like that. And I was clicking the button and couldn't come off. And so my question would be, where is the, I'm guessing you're going to say because there is none, but that in the spirit of, again, actually knowing all of the information before we vote, that to Dr. Temple's point, we really should invite him into the discussion because we actually are supposed to hear the purpose and the point prior to starting the vote.
Right. And I would have been happy to recognize him. I'm sorry I didn't see him ask for recognition.
Sorry doesn't count.
So per Robert's Rules of Order, I think we have to finish our vote. And before I ask for an adjournment for the meeting, I'll ask Dr. Gallian to speak.
I don't know what good that's gonna do since we would have voted and you all
Well,
seem
it
pretty
won't-
upset
Well, it
prior
will-
to having heard him at all, but I'll say yay.
Okay, yay. Ms. Bailey,
Nay.
Mr. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Watley,
Again, I'm getting caught up in all of this arguing.
we're voting on the motion, Ms. Watley, yay or nay?
Nay.
Ms. Roberson,
Yes.
Ms. Roberson voted yes, Mrs. McKinney.
thank you. Dr. Temple,
Yes.
and I vote nay. So the motion fails. Before adjournment, I would like to recognize Dr. Gallion. Ms. Waters, would you like to reword your question for Dr. Gallion?
No, I'm sure he gets it.
Good evening. So I want to say, first of all, that it's very disheartening that we're even going down this road. And this is a really inappropriate way to start off our relationship. With these two appointments, they're both vacant positions. We have found the funds to support them in the general operating fund. So I don't understand why a board would take this type of action when there is an expectation that I can move this organization forward. These two individuals that I am appointing are individuals that I know their capabilities, I know their work, and it helps the organization. We need these positions no matter what, whether it be these two individuals or any other individuals. We need these two positions. We have over 50 elementary schools that we need support for. We have a chief of schools vacancy that should have never been cut from the budget in the first place. And I explained this to Ms. McKinney and Mr. Grabowski about why a chief of schools is needed. Because right now, for all intents and purposes, Ms. Huggins is acting as the chief of schools, and that is not an appropriate role for her. That is additional to all of her responsibilities. And I need her to focus on the other things instead of being the chief of schools. And so I'm disappointed with this whole situation, but we're going to move forward.
Is there a motion to adjourn the special called meeting?
I move.
Moved by Ms. Watley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Grabowski. Mr. Grabowski, how do you vote?
Yay.
Mr. Kelly?
Yay.
Ms. Waters?
I
Okay,
believe she's left.
right. Ms. Bailey?
Yay.
Mr. Calhoun, I see has left. Ms. Watley?
Yeah.
Ms. Roberson?
I think Ms. Roberson has also left, Mrs. McKinney.
Oh, okay. Dr. Temple?
Nay.
And I vote yay. So the meeting